There is only one that is Shaykhul Islam amongst them. There is one amongst them in all of their history that they consider to be the greatest Jewish mind, and that is the Jewish theologian, the most famous in the history of Judaism. Anybody? Yes, very good, but who? Oh Muslims, you should know this name because he was an Arab, meaning he spoke Arabic, that's what I mean. He lived in the lands of Muslims. He spoke Arabic more fluently than any language. He wrote in Arabic. And, totally different tangent. Why am I going to these tangents? There is a theory that for a period of his life he was a Muslim because he studied in a madrasa. He memorized portions of the Quran. He studied fiqh and aqidah in the Islamic tradition because back in those days, all universities were run by Muslims. Back in those days, if you go to university here, right, you go to UTD or SMU or something, they tell you must take American history, you must take political science, these are the required courses, right? You cannot graduate in this country without taking these courses, right? Well, once upon a time, if you wanted to go to any university and study engineering or medicine or optics, you would have to study Fiqh 101. Basics of Sharia. Okay, you have to study tafsir of the Quran. I'm not joking. This is exactly what needed to be done. Okay, that was that. So, Musa ibn Maimonides, you should know the name. Maimonides, memorize this name. This is the single greatest intellectual of Jewish history completely. They call him the chief rabbi, Rambam, the chief rabbi. He was the greatest rabbi in the history of Judaism. He codified Jewish law. The Jewish law that he codified is basically after he studied Islamic Sharia. Now he's writing a book of fiqh. Okay? And he is the first and most important Jewish figure to write a book of aqidah, the book of theology. He wrote a book of theology and he summarized it in 13 points. And he called it the 13 principles of Iman. 13 principles of Iman. Why did he summarize Aqidah? Because he studied Aqidah from the Muslims and now he wants to do the same for the Jewish faith. And so, Jewish Aqidah, when it comes to many things, is actually coming from the philosophy of Ibn Rushd, Averroes and others, because Musa ibn Maimonides and Averroes were basically coming from the same philosophical strand. Anyway, back to our topic. What am I talking about? What am I talking about, guys? What's the topic? What the Yahud believe about what? Exactly. Not about the Dajjal. You're jumping the gun. The Yahud believe about what? Masih. Be careful. The Masih, the Mashiach, the Malach Mashiach, the king of the Messiah. So, Musa ibn Maimonides wrote a book called the 13 Principles of Faith. By the way, you can look it up. It's translated into English. And each principle begins with the phrase, Ani ma'min, ana mu'min, ana mu'min, ana mu'min, ani ma'min in Hebrew. Ana mu'min, this, I believe in this, I believe in this, I believe in this. The 12th principle of these 13, and I quote from the translation, my Hebrew is too weak to actually read it to you, I'm not going to embarrass you with that, but I quote from the translation, I believe with full faith, ani ma'min, ana mu'min, in the coming of the Messiah. This is in the Aqidah of Maimonides, which is the standard Aqidah of the Jewish peoples up until our times. He is the only one who has codified to that level, Aqidah and fiqh. I believe with full faith, yaqeen, certainty in the coming of the Messiah. And even though he delays, with all that delay, I eagerly await his arrival, every day anticipating his arrival. This is the Aqidah of Maimonides that the Yahud would memorize, that they still believe to this day. And as I mentioned to you earlier, we should all be aware that there are 3 strands, right, of Judaism in our times. They are number 1, which one? Orthodox. Number 2, conservative. Number 3, reform. There are others, reconstructions, but for ours, let's just keep it these 3. And the bulk of them in our times are reform. Okay? Actually, another tangent, but again, this is stuff you should be aware of. This is something interesting. Around 20, 30 years ago, the Orthodox were so minuscule that the assumption was they would disappear. It would be gone, especially in the 70s. But there has been a massive revival. And more Yahud are joining the Orthodox, even if their parents were not Orthodox. And so the Orthodox movement has swelled in ranks. And I don't know the latest statistics, but I think maybe up to 15%, which is a big number compared to what it was in the 70s. 15%, like, 1 out of 8 is an Orthodox, okay? And one of the reasons, by the way, again, all of this is a tangent, but inshallah it is beneficial to us as Muslims, because we need to learn from the good and the bad. We need to see history, we need to learn what's going on. The fact of the matter is, why is there a return to orthodoxy? Frankly, because when you have a religion whose values become so watered down that they don't stand for anything, the very people say, what is this? It's not a religion anymore. And they will go back to an actual religion. And this is a big warning to those amongst the Muslim community who are flirting with progressive Islam. When Islam becomes the flavor of the month, then you have no Islam left. Then what is the purpose of being a Muslim? When the halal becomes what is politically correct, and the haram becomes what is politically incorrect, and you have no backbone to stand on, and you think you are preserving your faith, in reality you are losing it. Your children will not have any faith. What do you have left anymore? Our faith is not based upon the whims of society around us. We have the Quran, we have our Sharia, we have the Wahy from Allah. Now I'm not saying we have to be intransigent. No, our ulama, especially our forward-thinking ulama, have to navigate the flow. Where there's allowance, we will take it. But where there is none, we will not take it. Where there's a red line, we do not go that area. So that's a point we learn. In the 1960s, 70s, there was a massive, as I said, almost everybody is going reform. Their own children began rejecting it. And they said, what is this? There's nothing there. There is no, to be reformed, you can be atheist. You can deny God. There's no Sharia. You can eat pork and whatnot. And there's like, what is left of my Jewishness? They will say, what is left if there's nothing? So there's going back to the asl. And the asl is Orthodox. That is the hardcore literalism. Now, within Orthodox, there are many strands. And of course, you have the Hasidic Orthodox. You are all familiar with the Hasidic, H-A-S-I-D-H, the Hasidic. And the Hasidic in particular is a strand of Orthodox. They have a very strong and passionate belief about the coming of the Messiah, that he is very imminent, just about to appear. And they believe, and this is important again, that the more pious they are, the more quickly the Messiah will come. And that explains their fervousness. That explains their literalism. Right? They want to be, the more pious they are, so the more faithful they are, the faster will come the Messiah. Right? And so they are very, very hardcore about this. And within Hasidism, so this is, I'm teaching you the firaq within Orthodox Judaism, okay? By the way, Reform does not believe in the Messiah. It's completely, obviously, right? Reform doesn't believe. Conservatives, mushkila with them is they don't really have La ilaha ula wa la ilaha ula mudabdabin. They don't have, the conservatives, they don't really have a platform per se, because at least with the Orthodox, they're hardcore. Like everything is all the way. Right? The Reform, nothing. Throw everything out the window. The conservatives, they don't really have a platform. Some here, some there. How do you decide? Each conservative strand has its own issue. So, amongst the conservatives, some of them believe in the Messiah, some of them don't. Amongst the Orthodox, they all believe in the Messiah. Is that clear? Right? That's why they're still Orthodox. They believe in the coming of the Messiah. The Hasidics are of the most messianic amongst them. And within Hasidism, there is the most prominent stand of Hasidism is called the Chabad, C-H-A-B-D, the Chabad movement, the Chabad, the Chabad movement. The Chabad movement in particular is the most messianic, so much so, one of the greatest Jewish figures of our times, an American born in Russia, migrated after Germany coming here. He died in 1994. His name was Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, one of the most famous rabbis, presidents from what is it, I even forgot who is it, Ford or whatever onwards, they would have a regular